What's up, fuckers? So, it is time to review WrestleMania 17. Now, I've already reviewed this show like 2 years ago, but I just wanted to re-review this show just to update the review. And also for the fact that WrestleMania is around the corner, which I sure as hell am not gonna watch. Like, I don't even know what the WrestleMania card looks like, and neither do I care. So let's talk about this show. So today is April 1st, which is not only April Fool's Day, but is also the 18-year anniversary of what is considered to being the greatest WrestleMania of all time. Yeah, I'm sure some people, especially the Schleg Daddy, will disagree, but I still think this WrestleMania is still one of the greatest WrestleManias of all time, whether you agree or disagree. Now, I'm not sure what else I can say about WrestleMania 17 that hasn't already been said. The card was stacked. You had so many of the Attitude Era stars at the prime of their careers during this period. The atmosphere was amazing. The crowd was hot throughout. You had a great theme song called My Way from Limp Bizkit, which is a band I was never a fan of, but I will admit this was one of their few good songs. And you had a great commentary from Jim Ross and Paul Heyman himself. There was so much hype surrounding this one show, but is WrestleMania 17 still the greatest WrestleMania of all time? Well, let's find out. So we kick off this show with Chris Jericho defending his Intercontinental Championship against William Regal. Now, I actually remembered this feud started with Chris Jericho pissing in William Regal's mug and William Regal drinking his piss, which sounds pretty childish, but I thought was pretty funny. You know, especially the look that William Regal gave after drinking it. Oh man, I just died laughing. And man, William Regal was awesome as the commissioner in 2001. Like, he just had a lot of funny moments as commissioner, especially with Tajiri as his assistant. Now, the match itself was decent. I personally didn't enjoy this match as much as I did back then because I would have expected better from those two. Both Jericho and Regal are both known to being pretty good mat technicians, but it didn't seem like those two had the best chemistry. But for what it was okay. Chris Jericho retains his Intercontinental Championship, and we move on to the worst match on this show. Now, I'm not going to say anything about this six-man match between the Right to Censor and Taz and the APA because this match was lame. We then get a triple threat match for the Hardcore Championship between Raven, who was walking in as the champion, versus Kane and the Big Show. Now, this was a pretty fun hardcore match, and this is what I've always loved about the Hardcore Championship. Anything goes. You could fight backstage, you could fight in the crowd, you could fight anywhere outside, and thanks to Crash Holly's 24/7 rule, the Hardcore Championship could be defended at any time, and it was a lot of fun. Now, Raven, I've always felt should have been used a hell of a lot better in the WWF. Maybe not necessarily having him being a main eventer, but at least being given the Intercontinental Championship. Because giving him the Hardcore Championship 27 times because he's a former ECW guy should have not been all he was good for. But of course, since Vince McMahon, Pat Patterson, and Gerald Briscoe hated Scott Levy, he wasn't gonna go far in the company. I mean, like, even when he changed his look in 2002, they still treated him like complete and utter dog shit. Hell, I've looked back at what he was doing on Sunday Night Heat back in 2002, and during his heel promo, he was getting heel heat, which shows that Raven had something to offer. But I'll put the link to the video down below. But as for the Big Show and Kane, to me they were too good for the Hardcore Championship. It just felt like they just threw them in there just to have them be a part of the show. But either way, it was a fun match, and Kane is the new hardcore champion. The next match we get is Eddie Guerrero versus Test for the European Championship, which is a match featuring two guys who are sadly no longer with us. Now, this match was pretty decent. Test I've always thought was very underrated, and I've always been a sort of a fan of his. To me, he was not a bad worker for a man his size, and he obviously had the main event look to him, and felt like he should have been used better during these times of the Attitude Era. He had something with the push he was getting in 1999 when he was kayfabe-wise dating the boss's daughter, who was Stephanie McMahon. But of course, that push was given to Triple H, and the Test was buried. And I really felt bad for the guy. But yeah, his match with Eddie Guerrero was pretty decent. Eddie Guerrero wins due to the help from the Radicals. I kind of felt Test should have gone over here, but it was what it was. The next match we get is Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit. Now, this match was kind of thrown in there at the last minute, but I guess it was a way to get Benoit and Angle to be a part of the show since they had no matches set up for WrestleMania. Now, this right here was a pretty good technical match between the two. Not a great match, but good. Because I personally thought that Angle and Benoit would go on to have better matches later on in the future. From their submission match at Backlash, which was a month from this pay-per-view, their Unforgiven match in 2002, and their match at the Royal Rumble in 2003, which I thought was their best match. But this was still good, because a match involving Benoit and Angle is impossible to be bad, because those two were the best mat technicians around this time. And nobody, and I repeat, nobody could touch them when it came to their in-ring wrestling. So Angle wins due to a cheap roll-up, but then Benoit gets his revenge by locking in the Crippler crossface during Kurt Angle's interview. Then we get Chyna versus Ivory, who was a part of the Right to Censor for the Women's Championship. Now, this match had a lot of build-up behind it, with Chyna wanting to get her revenge on Ivory for breaking her neck. And the match itself was basically a squash match. Chyna beats Ivory in just a very easy fashion. Welp, at least Chyna had a pretty cool entrance and looked smoking hot. Now, this is where we get to the meat and bones of this pay-per-view. We have Shane McMahon versus Vince McMahon in a street fight, with Mick Foley as the special referee. So the whole build-up behind this was that Linda McMahon wanted a divorce from Vince McMahon after having an affair with Trish Stratus. So, of course, Vince McMahon, not taking that too well, puts his wife in Medicaid, where she couldn't move or say anything and was in a wheelchair. Shane McMahon challenges his father at WrestleMania due to his recent actions, thus led to Shane McMahon buying out WCW right under his father's nose. Mick Foley, after being fired from the WWF, makes his return and becomes the special referee, and that's what led to this matchup right here. Now, this match right here was amazing. Shane and Vince McMahon really went out there and told one hell of a story in this match. And in my opinion, this is Vince McMahon's best WrestleMania match. Yes, even better than his match against Hogan. And man, Vince McMahon played an amazing heel during this match. Like, he really made you feel like he was the devil. And the best part about this match was Linda McMahon having to get up from her wheelchair, not doing anything for a while, and she kicks Vince McMahon right in the balls, and the crowd went crazy. This right here is the type of storytelling that's missing from modern wrestling. But yeah, Shane McMahon wins with an amazing coast-to-coast finish, and dude, I gotta give my props to Shane McMahon. Even though he wasn't an active wrestler, he wasn't afraid to do crazy spots. And this was not the only good match he had this year, because his match against Kurt Angle at the King of the Ring pay-per-view was just as good, if not better, and it was very brutal. Then we get TLC 2 between Edge and Christian versus the Hardy Boys versus the Dudley Boys for the Tag Team Championships. Now, what else can I say about TLC 2 that hasn't already been said by countless others? This match was fucking legendary. These three teams had one hell of a rivalry from 2000 to 2001, and their matches never disappoint and just got better and better. There's a reason why people, even friends of mine, still talk about these classic TLC matches, because those three teams really set the bar so high for ladder and TLC matches that I don't even know if any other team can top what they've done. You know, it's like these three teams made tag team wrestling cool. Now, what can I say about this match that hasn't already been said? You had bodies going through tables, Jeff Hardy doing crazy swanton bombs through tables, and of course, that classic moment where Edge speared Jeff Hardy in midair while hanging from the titles. At that time, as a little kid, I went, holy fucking shit, that was crazy, even though I was heavily cheering for the Hardys to win. And the funny thing is, this wasn't the first time Edge speared Jeff Hardy in midair, because he's done it before on that one Raw back in 2000. And that was a ladder match that took place on Raw after the Hardy Boys beat Edge and Christian at Unforgiven for the tag team titles. I guess they wanted to do it again for a classic WrestleMania moment. But this was great, and the cameras flashing from the crowd just made it even better. Now everybody's on their smartphones. Now, some will complain about the run-ins from Lita, Rhino, and Spike Dudley. To me, I didn't really mind it too much. The match ends with Rhino, who debuted around this time, putting Bubba Ray Dudley and Matt Hardy through 4 tables when being pushed off a ladder. And then Edge and Christian win yet again. I still don't understand why they had to have Edge and Christian win for the 3rd time in a row. That to me was my major gripe about these matches. They couldn't have the Hardy Boys win at SummerSlam 2000 even at their hometown, and even not for this show. Like, I don't know, maybe the WWF just saw more in Edge and Christian as future stars. But why not have the Hardy Boys or the Dudley Boys at least win one of these matches? Just saying. Like, if you were to ask me, the Hardy Boys should have won at SummerSlam at their hometown, and the Dudley Boys should have won here. Especially knowing they've never won a WrestleMania match. I mean, they're supposed to be the best tag team in the world, but they've never won a single WrestleMania. Like, back then, many of my friends and I couldn't stand Edge and Christian always winning, but it was what it was. But still, this was a great match. Now look, I'm not one to give matches rating systems, but if I were, this and the street fight are 5-star matches for sure, because of good build-up and rewatchability after all these years later. Then we get to a gimmick battle royal to cool off the fans after that crazy TLC match. This match wasn't all that because all of the guys participating in this match were all past their prime, but it was what it was. It was great seeing Bobby Heenan doing commentary again, and may God rest his soul. Even though I've never grew up watching him in his heydays of the 80s. But it does put a smile on your face hearing his voice again. Now, this was pretty much the most we were getting in terms of past stars working as part-timers for WrestleMania. For all you noob fans out there, it wasn't always like this. We didn't need past stars because the roster was super deep with star power, unlike nowadays. So yeah, Iron Sheik wins the Battle Royal and we move on to the next match. We have Triple H taking on The Undertaker. Now I have to say, Triple H has a really good taste in music by coming out to Motorhead. This is when Triple H's theme song was still relatively new. And him coming out to the live entrance of Motorhead was just fucking badass, man. Even though Lemmy was botching his lines, but it was still a badass entrance. It's kind of sad rewatching this show, seeing that a few of the people on this show are no longer with us, like Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Test, China, Bobby Heenan, and Lemmy. And all I can say is rest in peace to all of them, except for Chris Benoit. But as for the match itself, this was great. And I'd probably say this was Triple H and Undertaker's best encounter at WrestleMania, at least in my opinion. But yeah, it was a great match. Undertaker wins with the last ride, and yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about it. And last but certainly not least, the main event. We have Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock for the WWF Championship, with a no disqualification stipulation added at the last minute for some reason. Now, the build-up behind this match was amazing. If you saw the video package for this match, you know how epic it was. You know, it goes from Stone Cold Steve Austin winning the Royal Rumble, then to The Rock winning the WWF title at No Way Out, and that's what led to this match right here. Two of the biggest icons in wrestling going at it for one piece of gold in the largest stage of them all, and it really doesn't get any better than this. This right here was a damn classic match, even with that damn finish, which I'm gonna get to in a moment. But yeah, those guys just went at it, and during this time, like, I didn't know who to cheer for. Like, it was just a kick-ass and brutal fucking match. I even liked the moments in the match where Austin is pulling out a few moves that he had not done in a while, like the sleeper hold, which he used to do when he was the ringmaster, and the sharpshooter. And speaking of sharpshooter, there was this one moment in the match where Rock locked in the sharpshooter on a bloody Austin, which gave you flashbacks from Austin's match with Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13. Now, this right here was the best Rock and Austin match you were ever going to get, and I really don't care what Schleg Daddy says about this match being the worst out of their three because of the ending. No, this was the best Rock and Austin match you were ever going to get from their build-up, from Rock and Austin pulling out all their best moves, and even the commentary from Jim Ross and Paul Heyman. And let me tell you, Paul Heyman is a damn underrated commentator. I personally would have loved to have seen him do more in the commentary department because he just had a fucking badass voice. But yeah, like, everything was going great until that fucking ending. So what happens is that Vince McMahon comes out and helps Austin win the WWF Championship. It took Austin multiple times to beat The Rock, but he finally came to do so with multiple chair shots. This was a fucking stupid ending. Turning Austin heel at WrestleMania 17 was one of the stupidest wrestling decisions ever made. I mean, come on, this show would have ended perfectly if they just had Austin stun Vince McMahon in the end. But no, they had to shake hands after all these years of their rivalry. I mean, seriously, this makes no fucking sense at all, dude. I mean, like, that would have been like having Batman aligning himself with the Joker, or having Bugs Bunny align with Elmer, or having Luke Skywalker going to the dark side by joining Darth Vader, after 2 movies of building him up to be a Jedi Master. And no, I am not a huge Star Wars fan, I just love the original trilogy, and that's it. Obviously, this was a sign that the Monday Night Wars were over, and that WWF could do whatever the fuck they wanted to do now that they no longer have competition. And everything after this show was downhill from here. Oh, fucking Christ, the invasion storyline. Oh, God. But I'll get to that for a future video. And Austin, what the fuck were you thinking? Why would you assume you were getting stale as a babyface? Did you not hear the reaction you were getting at Unforgiven 2000 or the Royal Rumble of 2001? Like, seriously, dude, you should have had more confidence in yourself because fans were not ready to boo you. But regardless of the ending, this show was still amazing. Now, is WrestleMania 17 still the greatest show of all time? Yeah, it probably is. Yeah, some will disagree, especially Schleg Daddy, and that's perfectly fine. But this right here is personally my favorite WrestleMania and was one hell of a badass show. You know, you had great technical wrestling matches, hardcore matches, TLC matches, and no DQ matches. And it's a must watch for anybody. Overrated? Who cares? I mean, I personally go back and watch this pay-per-view from time and time again, and it never gets old. Does the ending ruin the pay-per-view? Honestly, it all depends on what you think, but this still is a great show, and a top 5 WrestleMania along with 3, 10, and 14. But anyways, guys, that was my review of WrestleMania 17. I hope you enjoyed. And later, bitches. I'll see you next time.